Hey up my ducks, it's Simon here. Welcome back to the Hermit's Cave. So, today I thought I would do a quick VR to Becca, our Becca from Becca Talks and Tarot. And on Saturday, she put out a tag for us to consider, reflect on, and do a response to. And I'd spoken to Becca about this tag, and I think it's a really interesting one to get involved in. So it's called My Tarot Growth, and it looks at how we as tarot readers, and that doesn't have to be a professional reader, that can just be how we as people who are interested in tarot for whatever way that we use them, whether we divine with them, whether we use them for meditation, self-reflection, or, you know, inner child work, path working, whatever it is that we use the tarot for, that tool, how we have grown in our tarot practice from our first deck to our last deck, or our most recent deck. We never say last tarot decks. Never say last, because you never know. Yeah, so kind of what's happened during that time in between, in ways in which, you know, have our taste changed in terms of art style, the systems, have we switched tarot systems, the genre of decks, and as I said, how we read, or whether we still do the same spreads that we started off doing, or whether we've kind of adapted our own and that sort of thing. So I thought it was really interesting. So as many people will know, unless you're one of the new subscribers to my channel, and thank you, I've just crossed the 10,000 subs line. I'm really blown away by that, and I will be doing a giveaway just as soon as what I would like to give away arrives. And there is a excuse me, there is a bit of a delay on that, on it coming, but there will be a giveaway to mark the occasion as a bit of a thank you from me. But you know, there are a few subscribers, so you might not know a lot about my tarot history, so this is for you as well. And for those of you that do, I'm sorry to repeat, but it'll be interesting as well just to kind of think about what's happened in that time. So my first tarot deck was the 1JJ Swiss, and I acquired this deck back in 1987. This wasn't the deck, the actual deck, because I don't know what happened to that one, other than, you know, with my Christian background and time in the Mormon church, tarot wasn't something that was advocated in any way. But I got this as a 16-year-old boy, and I was fascinated with the tarot from the moment I first saw it. I loved the images. They seemed, you know, to really call to me. I had seen them before, because this deck is the one that was used on a program when I was about, I think it started late 1970s, I'd be 8 or 9, into my teenage years, called Tales of the Unexpected, and these cards were actually part of that opening sequence. The colours are amazing, you know, they're basically red, yellows and blues. This deck has Jupiter and Juno, so a lot of the kind of religious iconography was changed to make it more palatable at the time, or not to offend, you know, by using the Pope, etc. But I looked at the pips in this deck, and I just did not have a clue how to read this deck at all. It came with a Celtic cross pull-out spread. So I used to remove the minors and courts and just work with the majors, and basically just use my intuition. There was no book or anything that came with it. It was just the cards and a pull-out spread. So I would, you know, lay down the cards, look at the positions on the sheet, and then kind of interpret the cards the best way I knew how to, just by going on what the images were telling me. I used to do readings for my sister and my friends, and I really enjoyed it, and I was fascinated with the tarot as a tool. After quite a few years, going to probably 2001, so nearly 20 years ago, after leaving the Mormon church, I found, through a development circle, soul cards. I have soul cards 1 and 2 separately, but I also bought the originals. These are the originals, and merged them into one huge deck. They have the same design on the backs, but some are blue and some are in this kind of maroon colour, but they still go together. It makes a huge deck. But I loved soul cards because the images have no keywords, no titles, no numbers. They don't come with an information book that offers interpretations. And the idea is these images speak to your soul, and you read them intuitively. And because we are ever changing, we go through different states of mind, states of being, different experiences. We can look at a particular card and then interpret it in a certain way, and then maybe 2-3 weeks later we look at the cards again, and depending on what we're experiencing in our life, we see different things in it, and it means different things. So this was an incredible tool. And I used to do what was called the psychic parties, and I used to do take bookings and go to these parties, and I would give readings to people, and I read exclusively with soul cards, and I absolutely adored them, and had some really good and powerful results using soul cards. So I was going to say I read with soul cards right up until, but actually they're still an important tool for me today. I absolutely love them. I couldn't be without them. I've gotten to know the artist and creator, Deborah Koff-Chapin. I've interviewed her on my channel, and I've been one of the lucky people to help her select the final 60 cards for her third deck, which is coming out later in the year, I believe between October and December, called Portals of Presence. And I've got the prototype cards, and it's going to be a fantastic deck. So I feel very blessed to have, you know, having worked with those cards for so long, get to know the creator a little bit. In 2008, I discovered, which is 12 years ago, I discovered the RWS Tarot. Although it doesn't mention, annoyingly, this version does not mention Pamela Coleman Smith until the little font at the bottom, but it's called the Rider-Waite Tarot Pack. And I saw that it was the original tarot pack, and it comes in a set like this with the pictorial key. And this one in particular, I bought it back in 2008, and there was two things in particular that really stood out to me. One was these images, and I've mentioned this many times, these images in particular really spoke to me on a deep and profound level, and there was a familiarity to them. I looked at these cards and it was almost a far-reaching memory. If memory is the right word, you know, it could be a connection to the collective consciousness. Maybe these are archetypes at the end of the day, but there was a familiarity to them, and it was like coming home, and I loved them. The only problem was this deck in particular, the original one, the one that you can get now from shops, is very blotchy, very oversaturated. Some cards in particular, like the Ten of Pentacles, King of Pentacles, they are so blotchy that it's really hard to make out some finer details. So they're not that attractive as a deck to use and to work with. Nevertheless, I really enjoyed them. And it was such a revelation to have a tarot deck that didn't have these patterns, these pip cards that I just couldn't read, because I'd had this experience now of reading intuitively. This made it easier to learn. I bought the Tarot Bible, and the Tarot Bible was brilliant for me in as much as it didn't overload me with information. There was keywords, there was upright and reverse meanings. I only learned the upright meanings, but it was an easy way for me to memorize and get some underpinning knowledge that I could then link with my knowledge that I'd gained by reading the cards intuitively, to be able to meld them together and become a better reader. The last tarot deck that I bought, and I think it's really important, and I was talking to Becca about this, to emphasize that the last deck is the one you actually bought, because this isn't the last deck I received, because I've received decks in trades, I've received decks to review, I've received decks as gifts, and they're somebody else's choices for me. And if we're talking about how we have grown, because it's my tarot growth, then I think it's important to say this is the last deck I actually purchased because I wanted to work with it. And ironically, it is an RWS. And this one is the CS Tarot by Conrad Stein, CS for Coleman Smith. This is the Jumbo edition. I do have another one that I bought that is coming with the burnt orange backs, which are beautiful. But talking of the blotchiness in the original, this one in particular, the line work is so much sharper. It is crisper. You see a lot of the details. And because they have different colour tones, they're not as garish. They're certainly not oversaturated. He does these beautiful crackle back effects, as you can see. And these are just a joy to work with and to read with. So this is my last purchased deck that has arrived, at least anyway. I did make a substantial tarot purchase yesterday, but there's going to be a few weeks till that gets to me, and I will obviously show them. Look how beautiful these cards are. So how have I grown as a tarot reader, looking at my first tarot to my last tarot, in terms of the following? So art style. I love Marseille decks. I love the wood block kind of printing. I love the scarce use of colour, just using kind of primary colours. There's something very ancient and something very vintage about them that just really makes you feel that you're holding an important piece of history as well as art in your hands. I do prefer Pamela Coleman Smith's artwork because of that connection to something greater than me, because of that connection to my intuition. It's ignites my intuition and helps me to see the scenic images, and therefore, you know, it's easier for me to describe what I'm seeing and pick up on, because I'm also somebody who works with energies, whether that's psychometry or clairsentience. I like to get a feel of the person and also what I'm seeing in the images. The system has changed. I started with a Marseille. I struggled to read the pips, so I didn't in the early days. I have since really connected with Marseille style decks. Probably about 2 years ago, I went on a real Marseille journey, and I'm fine with Marseille. I love Marseille. I kind of read them differently because I use the basic numerology 1 through to 10, and, you know, link those numerological associations with the suits and the elements that they're representing. But I also still use my underpinning RWS knowledge too. That plays in, and if I pull something like the 6 of Swords, I'll see that beautiful curved swords in that beautiful arrangement, but my mind will also see the boat, you know, so I can't help that. That's just the way I am as a visual person. In terms of genre, you can see the decks behind me. I love all types of genres. I do enjoy particular decks for particular readings or how I work with decks. So in a child work, I love Deviant Moon because it reminds me of childhood dreams. Nicoletta Ciccoli reminds me of childhood books, John Bower and things like that. So pathworking, Deirdre of the Sorrows, I love to pathwork with, the Druid Craft. So the genres that I bring into my collection are either I think they're beautiful and I want it in my collection, but also I'm thinking about how I can work with that particular deck. What am I going to use it for? In terms of how I read, and I touched upon this in my interview with the lovely Rochelle a couple of weeks ago, you know, I used to just read one card as I was learning with the RWS. I would pull one card and learn it and think about it for the day. I then went to 3 cards. But actually way back, remember, in 1987 as a 16-year-old, it was the Celtic Cross because that was the layout sheet. So I learned those 10 cards and the positions and how they were in relation to each other and how they progressed on to that ultimate outcome. I don't think I've used the Celtic Cross since, actually. There are spreads that I'll use, like interview spreads for new decks, but now I'm very comfortable with 3 card spreads for my daily draws. But if I'm reading for others or I'm doing a real sort of where I want to journal about a particular situation and I need to do a spread, I'll use a 9 card spread where the 3 cards in the middle are the current situation. The 3 cards below are things that I need to be more conscious of. So that's kind of in the shadows, or things that I need to pay more attention to, bring to the surface, shine a light on. The 3 above are, you know, the steps to achieving what it is that I want to achieve, how I can get there, the advice given, you know, if I so choose to take it on board and follow it. So that's kind of how I've changed as a reader over the last 33 years of working with cards for divination. Oracle has been in there too as other forms of divination, but this is my tarot growth, the hashtag my tarot growth. Love to hear yours. Thank you, Becca, for starting this tag. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody else's results. I loved seeing Becca's video. And until next time, go in peace. Namaste and blessed be.